A minute gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning time. Good morning to you, Grenada, Carriacou, PD, Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, to you wherever you are. It's a wonderful, a glorious, a terrific, wonderful Wednesday morning. In case you're just rising from your night slumber, well, allow me to say good morning to you and choosing classic in the morning time. I want to say a special good morning again and welcome back to our viewers just joining us on television, Channel 7, Channel 11, and Channel 20 if you are in cable, that is. Or those of you following us via the World Wide Web at www.gbn.gd or on our social media feed, Facebook or YouTube. We say thanks for being part of the broadcast. I'm Joseph Cadore, you call me JC, and welcome to another edition of To The Point for today, the second day of the month of March. Yes, it is. We are in March. The saints, they are marching on and on. And indeed, it's a pleasure being here with you. Thank you for being part of this conversation. It is Wednesday, and as we do on Wednesday, we have representatives from the ruling administration. And allow me this morning to introduce my guests. No strangers to the GBN, no strangers to Grenada. I don't think they're strangers even to themselves. They know it. Allow me to introduce first the PS, Norman Gilbert, and the CEO of the NTA, Mr. Lincoln Morgan. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to The Point.
So good morning to you, Brother Cadore, and to, of course, Mr. Morgan. And to the listeners, to the viewers with GBN, special good morning, and it's good to be with you once again so we can share with the general public what's taking place within the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Development, and Information. So it's good to be with you again this morning.
Thank you, PS. Mr. Morgan?
Good morning to you and to all the listeners. It's good to be here. Looking forward to some interesting discussions.
Some rather interesting stuff. Mr. Gilbert, education, it's a function that can never be underscored. Its role and its importance, not just in the life of an individual, but as a developmental tool as we continue to position ourselves as a society to transition into that which is to come. And I'm saying that which is to come because wherever we were yesterday, that's history. The question is, where do we transition from here? What's happening? Bring us up to speed. What's the latest that's been happening from the ministry's end?
Well, as you rightfully said, Joseph, education really is probably the strongest pillar of any countries. And for a country to be able to advance economically, we have to look at the strength of the economic programs and the current program that supports persons within the country in terms of their development. And the human resource development is key to any country's economic future and economic prosperity. And so within the Ministry of Education, there is a responsibility that we have to ensure that we deliver quality education to our nation's children by principle. And of course, we also have a responsibility to support extension and what we call lifelong learning. So we have some programs that are geared towards the in-school young persons, but there are also a few programs geared towards the persons who are out of school to try and ensure that we work on a few key things that we believe will help to transform our economy and our country. We look at the issue of literacy, the issue of numeracy, the issue of provision of quality education to all sectors, which include the pre-primary, primary, secondary, tertiary, the involvement of TVET and skills education that would help to support the persons who are not so academically inclined. In fact, the dynamics have changed quite a lot, and not only those who are not economically inclined are leaning towards TVET. We also have persons who are very strong academically who are now trying to acquire some skill, because we do recognize that skill is an important element for the existence and transformation into a viable economy. We also have a responsibility to provide support services to our children. A number of children have issues and challenges within the school system, recognizing that they come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different social class, different communities. And so we have to provide that kind of support services. So we provide support services to students. We also provide the school feeding program, which is a part of our support services, so that the the child who leaves home in the morning and has nothing to eat and sits in the class and will not be able to assimilate what is being taught because they are hungry, we have to be able to provide some level of comfort for them. And so we provide that kind of support as well. But the ministry also have a significant responsibility to provide that kind of policy guidance to our educators, to our teachers, our principals, to managers of schools. And so we have to be able to shape the direction for education. We have to look at the national priorities. We have to look at the issues of scholarship and to be able to provide scholarship for advancement of our people based on the areas of national priority. And so it's quite a lot that the ministry has within its ambits. And we have been trying to ensure that we provide for every sector. We also have a significant a number of responsibility for persons who are differently able. And so we're talking about inclusive education and to provide for the child who may be dumb or deaf, who have some physical impairment, who we still have to ensure when we talk about equality of education, that they are not left out of that equal opportunity to be educated. So the ministry is quite dynamic. Of course, we also have to deal with our various stakeholders, regionally, locally, internationally as well. We also have to provide support where we have parents. We know the trust now for education has gone E, and so the whole provision of an e-platform that can provide that avenue where our students can still be at home and be connected and be able to have effective teaching and learning transferred, even though they are not physically within a classroom space. So there's quite a lot taking place, Cadore, within the ministry. I mean, great dynamics.
Right.
Of course, I just spoke about education because your question related directly to that, but we also have issues in terms of religious affairs and being able to ensure that religion is not left out of our children's development. And the ministry has started an initiative to provide what we call an hour of prayer before every school or every school semester begins to ensure that God is at the center of our children's development. We also have a responsibility to inform the public, and that's why we have the Government Information Service also attached. And so it's a real dynamic ministry. It has significant components that all have to come together. And I think we have been doing our best to try to ensure that we provide holistically for everybody who we believe are part of the education sector.
Indeed. You did mention one of your stakeholders, and of course we highlighted the overarching importance of training and your partners in training, and that's where I know the CEO of the National Training Agency, he will be proud to say, you know what, yes, we have been able to embrace the government's vision and support the government in ensuring, Mr. Morgan, that we prepare the next generation for their role and their positions in society.
Yeah, well, the National Training Agency was set up some years ago and given a mandate to oversee technical and vocational education and training implementation in Grenada as a mechanism for the development of the Grenadian workforce. The whole idea is that we want our education to be effective in preparing persons to be able to take hold of the opportunities that are available for engagement in economic activities. We as an NTA, we take this role very seriously, and we have over the last 12 years or so been trying to build a technical and vocational education and training system that is fit for purpose. In doing this, we have had to do a lot of collaborative arrangements with a number of stakeholders, including within the government, in the private sector, non-governmental organizations, to establish partnerships so that we can properly identify what the training needs are. We can set up a system that is targeted at meeting those needs that are identified. And then we oversee this system to ensure that what we deliver is quality technical and vocational education that can eventually, we hope, have a significant impact on the social and economic development of our country and our people.
I think we can reasonably assume that after 12 years that we've identified some of those core areas for development. What are some of those?
Well, what we try to do is to work along with the areas of priority identified by the government. So we don't try to do our own thing. And then if there are additional needs that we find, we work to meet those needs. So over the last 12 years, we've placed a lot of emphasis on things like tourism, agriculture, information and communication technologies. We've also looked at some of the allied health things like massage therapy, patient care. So we also, in addition to that, we are trying to look, while we look at what the current needs are, we have a responsibility to ensure that we're not just training persons for the current situation, but that we're looking at the future and see what are the needs going to be with regards to the workforce in the future. What are the emerging areas? And we are also trying to address some of those areas. There are a lot of challenges as we seek to do this, but we are working with all the stakeholders that are available and willing to work with us to see how we can surmount whatever obstacles that we find in terms of identification and building capacity within the system to deal with our current needs, as well as identifying emerging needs and trying to tailor the system to meet those also.
And I'm assuming, not Mr. Gilbert, that the ministry has committed itself as part of its developmental agenda. You've clearly articulated and identified those areas for development so that the NTA is not guessing when they offer training. He speaks of the transitioning environment, that enabling environment, those new areas of focus. What are some of those priority areas? I know years ago the government did develop some strategic pillars of development, but from education perspective, because we see that the education landscape it changes, that it's become really dynamic. But identifying some of those core areas that, for as far as the ministry is concerned, it's all green light. These areas must be covered.
I think when we look at the National Sustainable Development Plan 2035, which are guided by some key pillars and principles, one of which is that of ensuring that there is a well-rounded and educated population. And for that to happen, there are some key things that are going to be required for us to be able to provide that top quality, well-rounded education that we expect to provide. The Minister of Education at the last budget presentation spoke about the ministry's trust and focus for 2022. A key pillar of the ministry's trust is that of ensuring that we have greater support for TVET and skills education, recognizing that there are going to be some major economic activities that would require some basic skill sets of our population. We speak about the increase in the hotel and tourism sector, the building construction, and we should be able to provide persons who are skilled and trained to take up these opportunities that are going to be coming within the economic space when it comes to construction and building areas. So we look at the issue of hospitality, as Mr. Morgan would have said. In fact, we just recently had some dialogue for the establishment of a hospitality school here through partnership with the private entity that would provide training and capacity development for people who are interested in the hospitality sector. We look at the emerging areas in terms of the whole issue of science and the way that science and technology has been able to transform our countries and our economies, not only locally here, but also internationally. And the issues of ICT and the use of ICT within our economic space, and the need to digitally transform the activity that we do in terms of business, and so to be able to provide great opportunities for ICT. We look at the medical field and we see what COVID has done, and we see the impact of COVID in terms of our medical practitioners being able to provide that service that we required. We are in an environment where we should have some basic healthcare services that are essential to the country's development. And so a focus on areas of health is another priority area. Mr. Morgan did allude to the fact that there are some focus on areas of allied health and geriatric care and patient care. But there is also a need for some level of specialization of doctors, nurses. We have just recently partnered with St. George's University to provide scholarships for over 40 nurses who are doing a bachelor's in nursing program that's just started in January. And so we believe that there's a need to improve that kind of service within the medical field. Of course, we talk about scholarships and people that would go on to advance their studies in Cuba or other countries around the world, where they are going to also be exposed in some medical areas. And so we need to also place emphasis on the medical. There is a focus as well on the emerging technologies, the green climate technologies, the policy of the solar energy and other alternative means of energy that we believe is important and critical. And so there have been a number of training programs run by training providers that provides opportunities for that kind of skill set. So I think that the trust has been for ICT, the trust has been for medicine, the trust has been for construction, hospitality, engineering. We see a lot of persons that are going off there as well. And so we continue to have this whole dynamics where we believe that we need to provide well-rounded education so that we can move and we can achieve the objective of Plan 2035 when it speaks about having a well-rounded Grenadian. But we also have a sector that we have to provide for, which is the out of school. And the out of school are people who also need some opportunity for their own advancement and development. We see people who have been practicing certain skill sets with no certification. And probably Mr. Morgan may allude to that there are people who are practicing and who are not certified. And we need to provide training opportunities where they can be able to also achieve some level of certification, even though they have been practicing for quite a while. So there are a few areas. We talk about live song engineering and music production, and we see where the entertainment industry is going. And we also have a few areas that we are focusing on there as well. So I believe that, the trust has been to advance in as much areas as possible. Cabinet only recently would have appointed a national advisory committee that would advise the ministry in terms of emerging and needed opportunities for engagement, especially for scholarship. And so we believe that this committee would also be able to, it's a 21-member stakeholder committee, that this committee would be able to advise the ministry in terms of its area of focus as well. So there has been a lot taking place, but I believe that we are going in the right direction based on the plans and projections that we see going forward.
We live within a global space. There's CARICOM, the greater world, but I know the CVQ, Mr. Morgan, is one of the programs that creates a lot of excitement for the NTA. Speak to us about that.
The Curriculum Professional Qualifications, or the CVQ, is a qualification that was set up by CARICOM some years ago to address some critical issues that existed at the time and that still exist today. There is the CARICOM single market economy, which is being implemented. But a few years ago, there was a recognition that although persons who are university graduates can move easily and work from country to country, skilled workers have a problem moving and working because in a lot of cases, they're not certified. And so it's difficult for them to get a CARICOM skill certificate to be able to move and work. And so additionally, CARICOM also recognized the fact that there was a major problem in the workforce with regards to levels of productivity of workers. And additionally, there was the uneven development of the workforce across the region. And so CARICOM established the CVQ as a mechanism for addressing those issues. So you have the harmonious development of the workforce across the region, leading to certification that is recognized throughout CARICOM, and therefore facilitating the free and easy movement of artisans and other skilled workers across CARICOM. The Caribbean vocational qualification is based on the competency-based education and training methodologies. So when we train, there is something that we develop called an occupational standard, which we develop in collaboration with industry. So industry tell us what it is a person needs to be able to do and to know if they are to be competent in a work situation. This is developed into an occupational standard. And the occupational standard now forms the center of all training and certification. So the training centers that deliver training will deliver training in accordance with that occupational standard. The assessments that are done to determine the competence of the participants before certification is based on what that standard say they must be able to know and do. And so when we certify them, the emphasis of the assessments is not on their being able to talk about stuff, but they're being able to demonstrate that they can perform the tasks that are required in a real-life work situation. So the CVQ is competency-based. We try to make it demand-driven, so we develop occupational standards for areas that are needed in the workforce.
Right.
If it's not needed, there is no point in developing a standard. And then the training that is done, all training that we do or that we support with regards to the issuance of CVQs, they will have to include the technical training that is based on the standard. We will have to include life skills training, which includes building attitudinal stuff and relational skills in the workplace and those kinds of things. And it also has to include some actual work experience. So we don't just train you in a classroom and then certify you. We ensure that everybody who is certified would have had the opportunity to be able to go in the workplace and to use those skills with supervision from an employer. And then we certify persons as being competent.
That CVQ program, has it also been introduced? It's been also been introduced at the school level, secondary school level?
Yes, we are collaborating with the Ministry of Education in the delivery of a pilot project in the schools with regards to CVQ. And when CARICOM set up the Caribbean vocational qualifications as a means for workforce development in the region, they mandated the establishment of national training agencies in member states. And the national training agencies will be the bodies responsible for overseeing the delivery and the certification of persons with CVQs. At the same time, they also gave the Caribbean Examination Council responsibility for ensuring that persons within the school system also have opportunities for training and certification leading to Caribbean vocational qualifications. And so CXC is the one that's responsible for certifying persons within the school system. The National Training Agency certifies everybody else. And so we work collaboratively with CXC, with the Ministry of Education, to implement CVQ in schools. To date, we've had some successes. We've had persons who have been through this CVQ in schools program and have actually been certified by CXC. And we hope that over the next few years, we can work to ensure that this program grows into something bigger so that more students at the secondary level will have the opportunity to be able to do CVQ qualification while in secondary school.
Let me ask you though, Mr. Gilbert, and I'll come back to you, Lincoln. There have often been the argument that the current education system, the way it is structured, it is driven more to provide certification. But I'm listening to Mr. Morgan, and the CVQ goes way beyond that. It is literally saying to an individual, I don't just want you to come out and say, I got a grade A, I passed in a particular competency, but I'm literally equipping you with the specific tools needed. So when you're going into the classroom, do you get a sense that maybe, because you said it's in partnership with the CXC, and I'm thinking maybe one day the NTA, CVQ, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Gilbert would stand alone. Maybe I have an option when I get into secondary school. Do I go down the path of CXC? Or do I decide, you know what, there is a CVQ program. I think that's what I want to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Cadore. In fact, I would say that there are two streams here. Mr. Morgan spoke about the CVQ in schools and recognizing that there is a need to build the skill set at a younger age. With the partnership of CXC and the National Training Agency to provide that kind of assistance. Because CVQs are competency-based, you can really test what the students are able to do. I mean, a number of students who do CSEC or CAPE or whatever the case might be, they would do some form of SBA for some subject areas. The SBA is supposed to give a practical experience to the students, but I don't think that it's as comprehensive as what is done under the CVQ program, because the CVQ really tests the ability to do. A number of students finish school, maybe 11, 12, 13 CSEC passes, but the application and transfer of knowledge from what they would have done in a pure academia into the world of work is far different. I mean, you would see a young person with 11 CXCs come to a workplace and they cannot operate because they lack the ability to transfer what they would have learned and to apply it into the real life situation. And that's a fundamental difference with the CVQ, because it provides hands-on, it provides an opportunity for some level of internship and on-the-job training that the students will be exposed to at a very early age, and so you can test the competence of the students. Now, the question as to whether or not students can say, hey, I can do CXC or can I do a CVQ outside? Yes, that's perfectly fine. In fact, we have a number of students who, let's say, for example, go to NULO, who do CVQ programs that are certified through the National Training Agency and not really through CXC. And we also have within the ministry our community-based CVQ programs, which run after school. I mean, the minister have articulated the need for us to utilize schools, not just for 8 to 2:30, but even after school. And so the ministry had started a pilot project last year to look at utilizing schools that are equipped to be able to deliver CVQ for persons within the community, even after the school has closed. So we would have started 2 pilot projects last year, one in SAS in St. Andrew and the other at Westerhall, where we are doing furniture making in SAS and we're doing general construction in Westerhall. And we have persons in those classes who are students and who are from the community as well. We have persons ranging in age from age 14 to 55. And it shows that there's a need for that kind of education to be impacted within the community. And you can't get a CVQ even though you have left school 10 years ago, or even though you are still actively involved in school, because there are a number of persons who are actively involved in school, but the school does not provide the area that you might be interested in. So I have some students, I have 2 students in SAS who might be interested in furniture making, but they might be from Granville Secondary School, but Granville Secondary doesn't provide that. So now there's a chance for you to come to SAS in the afternoon after school is complete to be able to achieve a CVQ. So we have to look at the opportunities in school as well as the opportunities out of school, and we have been able to do so through our community programs and partnership with the NTA and CXC for the in-school program. In this calendar year as well, we're also going to be expanding. I want to inform Mr. Morgan, we're going to be expanding the CVQ in schools. We're expanding to more schools to provide more opportunities for young people who are interested in doing the CVQ while they are in school.
We have to take a quick break, but Mr. Morgan, do you think it's necessary that possibly while the CVQ program has been introduced at the secondary level, that maybe there's a need to have that engagement at a much younger age? Because I've often argued that a lot of individuals, children, they leave secondary school, gentlemen, and they have, what do you want to do in life? They have no idea. So they end up doing loads of subjects. To me, the system forces them to do 10 subjects. 11 subjects, because that is the seem to be the goal. Then they get to Tab CC, and then you realize, well, hold on, I only need 4 subjects to enter Tab CC. I'm going to come up with with an associate's degree that I can take further. Do you think, Mr. Morgan, before we take the break, that conversation as to should start at a much earlier age? So by the time I get to Form 3, Form 4, I should be specific. I should have a pretty good idea as to what my competencies are, what direction I'm heading for in life.
Yeah, one of the things I think we need to pay some more attention to as we move forward is the whole area of career development. And I think we need a career development program that starts in the early school years. And there are some good examples of programs around. Jamaica has a very good program. But in the very early years, you expose students to issues related to work in a way that they can understand and that is attractive to them. And as they move up in the education system, there is a series of activities that you expose them to that help them to get information about the world of work, information about themselves with regards to work, and that later on in their school career, they can put those two things together and start looking at what are the careers that I think are possible for me based on who I am and based on what is available out there, so that at some point they can make a choice. We are about to embark on a program. We're trying to get some funding to support the development of career maps so that we can make more career information available to students in the school system and to persons outside of the school system, and to help the counselors who do career counseling and career guidance to have that information that they can use with students to help students to see what the world of work looks like. And then they put them through other experiences that help them to gain information about themselves and to be able to make that match between them, who they are, and what is available in the world of work, and make good career choices. So yes, I do think that career development is a critical component of TVET and of education in general. And I think that in the next couple of months and years, we are going to engage in some activities to try to make this better than it is right now.
It's 26 minutes on to the hour. We take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Mr. Morgan, I know there is a topic, world skills. I know that's going to conjure up a little bit of excitement for you. We're going to talk about that when we come back, and we do also open the lines to the general public so that you can share your questions, queries, concerns, or just general contribution. To the point. We'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Get ready for a season of grooving smooth and live on GBN. Grooving Smooth and Live is a 1-hour performance gig every Thursday from 8 p.m. featuring performances from our local musicians and short interviews discussing all things musical. Every Thursday, a different musician and a different instrument will be featured, from the violin to the saxophone to the trumpet, guitar, and steel pan. Our local musicians playing, improvising, and educating us on all genres of music. Join GBN with host musicians Matthias and Shireen, and a special guest every Thursday at 8 p.m. It's Grooving Smooth and Live on GBN.
Join GBN on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. for Interesting Grenadians, a program that showcases the lives of interesting and outstanding Grenadians at home and abroad. It's Interesting Grenadians every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on GBN. Don't you miss it.
Welcome back to the program. 25 minutes onto the hour. Lines going off. We'll start with a few questions, gentlemen, from social media platform. One contributor is asking about the issue of teenage pregnancy, and I think in short, it probably serves to ask about young people getting a second chance, and I would expand it from just teenage pregnancy. I know that has been a challenge over the years. The second opportunities, what are available, and how does the NTA and other agencies fit into that conversation? And another contributor asked about what was the presence of woodwork. I know when I was a Palmer years ago. I did woodwork. God forbid you would not even imagine that. I don't even look the time. But I did get a chance, Mr. Morgan, to fiddle around with some bits and different pieces, mallets and different things. So somebody's asking about that. And a question directly for you, Mr. Morgan. I'm throwing it because I realize the questions are coming. Somebody, their CVQ, the certification got damaged. The certificate got damaged. They have to travel. What's the process for its replacement? So I'll start with you. Again, that was the first question that actually came. So the replacement and then either one of you can jump into the other areas of concern.
If your certificate is lost or damaged, you can come to the NTA and fill out a form to request a replacement certificate. And there is a process that we go through with regards to ensuring that we are replacing a certificate that was issued.
Right. Well, the question of second chances, whether it be through teenage pregnancy, whatever the situation or challenge was.
I think, Cadore, there has been a number of opportunities for second chances provided not solely by the Ministry of Education, but also by other government agencies and departments. We see the provision of opportunities through the Imani program, for example, as an excellent second chance opportunity for persons who would have dropped out of school, gotten pregnant. You join the Imani program, you are able to do advanced learning. You have CVQs, you have on-the-job training, you have opportunities for you to be able to feel yourself once again. Scholarships. We see other programs that are run by various ministries and departments to support. We see the Ministry of Education through the PALM supports persons like what you've just spoken about, who are looking for an opportunity for a second chance because they'd have gotten pregnant in school, or maybe have been in conflict with the law or something of that sort. So there are avenues for second chances. In fact, you also would have mentioned the issue of woodwork, and I'm happy to indicate that we have recently launched a skills training center in Montreal, in St. Patrick's, that provides opportunities for furniture making. So currently we are doing production. We are producing furniture there, but the facility also has a training component, a training function. And we are going to be training persons there in woodwork and furniture making. And so this is an excellent opportunity for persons who are within this vicinity, within this geographic space, to be able to come to the center and to receive training. Through our community programs in the evening, we also provide construction and woodwork training as well. And I know that the training providers, the NULO, the ABC Construction, Mr. Morgan probably give an extensive list of all those providers, provides opportunities as well for persons to receive training in that area. I believe that there are a number of second chance opportunities. The SKY program, SIAP has a number of opportunities for training under its agricultural program, funded. So some of which are free. SKY provides same. The Ministry of Youth provides same through the Imani program, Project Fly, Empower program. There's a number of things that are happening that people can receive second chance. What I believe is a little limited is persons who probably age 35 and above, who are still looking for a fourth and a fifth chance because they weren't able to grasp the second or the third chances that we have provided. And so I do recognize that there's a need for the ministry to focus on some program that will help in terms of these persons, especially in the area of literacy and numeracy.
Right.
We recognize that there are still a lot of people who are unable to read at age 35 or age 40. but yet they don't come forward, or yet we don't provide opportunities for them to be able to just to learn to read or to be involved in some program. And that's why we are working on the ministry to expand our lifelong training program, where we consider education not just to be for in-school youth, but also for persons who would have left school. So I know that a number of second chances that are going to be provided for people who are looking for opportunities. Of course, when it's provided, you also have to make the best of it, because some people don't really come forward to participate, and that's also something that we need to look at as well. How do we accept programs that are provided for us and for our own development?
Okay, we have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, go ahead, please.
And I thank you so much for that program. I just want to share a few things that I've noticed. Right? I'm not a youth, but I took the opportunity and paid my money to ensure that I get CVQ in geriatric allied health care, level 2. Now, I completed the course. I did my training at the hospital, General Hospital, for 6 weeks. And after that, I was fortunate to get a job in a private home, which was really good. However, may our soul rest in peace, she passed on after 2 years. Now, after that, I have applied to the General Hospital because I saw that there was a need at the hospital for elderly care, right? My grandfather was in the hospital, and I was so happy that I went there and I've seen what was happening in the hospital, especially someone have a stroke, they are unable to feed themselves, they cannot bathe themselves, and I know the nurses are doing good things, but they need that extra help, right? I'm home, I've applied everywhere. I went to that place in the stadium, dropped out my application, went to the ministry, dropped out my application, and you know what is hurting me the most? I'm home, sitting home with a CVQ in my hand. The government are taking persons that, don't have training most of the time to take care of elderly people. I'm not saying that if I see and I know, they don't have the CVQ. Maybe they have some level of understanding. Some of them, most of the time they take them, they don't even have the patience and the care for the elderly people. And it breaks my heart, to know that you have trained people. It's not myself, it's a group of us sitting home with our CVQ in our hand.
Okay, let's see if I can get the job.
And you take a whole lot of young people because you say that they're Imani or they are young, so they need whatever. But what was, and it was not a free program. We paid.
Okay, let me see if I can get the gentleman to respond. I'm not sure that if that falls within the purview, but if possibly that they can comment. Thanks a lot, caller. Gentlemen.
Well, Cadore, as you would imagine, it's not directly within my purview. I cannot really speak to the nitty-gritties of the arrangement in terms of employment within the hospital, nor within the Ministry of Health. But what I can say is that I believe the caller has demonstrated that the CVQ program is working, that she have acquired some skills that she was able to utilize, recognizing that there was a dire need at the hospital. And so it shows evidence that what is being done by the NTA and Mr. Morgan and the team to provide the quality of training is really bearing fruits. What we need to focus a little bit on now is transition from training to employment. And hence, I want to just speak a little bit about our national TVET policy, which I'm sure Mr. Morgan will also want to give a little bit of input on. Now, we have TVET programs being implemented by various training providers, and we lack the harmonization for effective transition within programs or from programs to the real world of work.
Right.
And so government recognized that there's a need for some policy to guide how we administer TVET programs, how we look at TVET funding, financing, regulating the TVET environment to ensure that training providers are training at a particular standard, and not that if you go to place X, you will get Y quality and you go to place Y, you would get Z quality. That the quality across the training providers would be equitable, and that efficient training would be able to be administered. And then we also had to look at access to training and the management of training and the regularization and the quality assurance that needs to be put in place. And so the national TVET policy is an important instrument for us to be able to navigate that space and to look at creating an opportunity for transition from training to the real world of work. And how can we have a harmonized system where we can feed enterprises and to feed businesses with persons who have been trained through the National Training Agency receiving a CBQ, and there's an outlet where they can go as an opportunity to be able to become employed. Right. What we find happening as well is that there are persons who are moving from programs to programs. Wherever there's a funded program, they would come to the program, receive a certification, go on to another program, and there's a difficulty getting into the real world of work to apply the technical skill that they would have learned.
Let me ask
so
you.
So I know that the policy is a piece of instrument that Mr. Morgan can also speak to because he's critically involved in the current design and preparation of the national TVET policy.
Let me throw Mr. Morgan back together, and I'm keeping my eyes on the clock. If you find I'm actually chopping you off because I realize there's so much we agreed that we have to focus on. Mr. Morgan, first let me ask you the concern that was raised by the previous caller. Does it point even further to a bigger problem where is a problem that existed within our education system where we teach, we provide information, but we do not necessarily provide persons or those with the competencies and the skill sets to transition them, gentlemen, from me just being an employee to now becoming an employer, where I decide I develop a business acumen. I decide, so there's a group of individuals, we've all been trained in this particular field, why not then we decide open our own business, whether it's in collaboration with the government, because if there's a genuine need for it, maybe that's an extension, that another arm that can be looked at, if not already available. Mr. Morgan?
Yes, the whole issue of entrepreneurship is addressed in almost every CBQ program. I think most of the occupational standards that lead to CBQ certification, there is a unit on entrepreneurship because we recognize that there may not be jobs waiting out there for everybody who is being trained and certified.
Right.
And so some people will need to be able to develop their own small businesses and maybe even become employers themselves. The thing is, though, it depends. Sometimes we need to be able to train people at the correct level so that they have the skill to be able to work independently. If someone does a level 1 CBQ, there's a very slim chance that you see that person being able to go out there and set up their own business. A level 1 person is someone who needs to work under supervision. A level 2 CBQ graduate is someone who is a more highly skilled worker and can work independently. A level 2 person, therefore, is in a better position to be able to go out there on their own and establish a business because they now can work independently. A level 3 graduate is even more prepared to be able to go out there and establish their own business because a level 3 person can now, is an even highly skilled worker, but can now accept some responsibility for the work of others, so they can work as a supervisor. And so can then be in a situation where they have responsibility not just for their own output, but for the work of persons who work under them.
Right.
So yes, we when we train and certify people with CBQ, the idea is that you have the competencies to be able to go in an establishment and perform at certain minimum levels. But depending on the program that you've done and the level of certification that you've done, you also can be in a position where you can establish your own business. And there are mechanisms out there that provide support like the GIDC and so on. even programs like SIAP and the Money program provide some support for persons in terms of developing their own businesses.
Is there a collaborative arm in those units, gentlemen, so that the GIDC can say, listen, NTR, the NTA say, they can say to them, okay, for the last year, these are the arms, this is the developmental strategy of the government, Mr. Gilbert. Mr. Morgan then says, okay, you've asked us for this is what we've done. We've churned out 50 persons in geriatric care at different levels. And then that information can then be passed on to GIDC that then says, okay, they are trained that we have 5 at level A, 5 at different levels. Maybe how do we transition this into a business so that it supports the greater function of what's needed for the Ministry of Health? Is that in place, or that may be something that is lacking?
Yeah, I think what you just described, Joseph, is exactly what the National TVET policy aims to do. It aims to bring all of these entities involved in TVET education under one umbrella, so that we have harmony and synergy in what we do. And a critical part of that is data collection, because we have to be able to collect the data to make the right decisions. And so we need to know how many persons are trained, in which areas they are trained, what are the training opportunities, how many persons they are targeting, so that we can utilize effectively the resources that we have. It should not be a case where NULO is doing general construction and so too are all other training providers. We need to be able to have some level of specialization in some areas and areas that can provide wider opportunities. So we have to have that synergy, which the policy is going to speak to, and they're going to speak to how we manage TVET education, the delivery of training, data collection, managing TVET finances, and so on. So I think you said it excellently.
But we'll have to get another program just to deal specifically with that. I have a caller that's on the line though. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning, brother.
Yes, go ahead, please.
You know, I would like to bring back in the school, especially the primary school, the 4-H clubs in school to teach those children how to do garden and how to do carpenter. In my days in school, we fix our own chairs for ourselves. We don't throw it in a can and let the government give us chair. We do it for ourselves, but please, thank you. I will bring back 4-H school in school for me. Please, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any of you gentlemen want to touch on that quickly, because there's something, Mr. Morgan, I know we have to touch before the hour expires.
Well, as a former 4-Her, I can tell you that the 4-H program is very active in schools. The population has been dwindling in terms of the 4-H movement, but we do have a number of schools that are still very strong in terms of its 4-H delivery, that are teaching practical aspects of agriculture and agribusiness to young people. Not only the 4-H, but we also have the junior achievers. COVID has affected the operation of the junior achievement program, I'm sure, within the schools, but there are mechanisms within the schools to promote business, and so we must encourage them to return to the days prior to COVID, where the 4-H and the JA were probably very active and were able to provide that kind of opportunities.
Okay.
Yes, but they do exist still in schools.
8 minutes on to the hour. To the gentleman, time was going. Yes, Mr. Morgan?
Just briefly say on this also. The co-curricular activities that are done in schools are very, very useful. I have seen persons, for example, who were involved in the music club in schools where I taught before. And a few years later, they were earning a living as entertainers, playing in the hotels, recording and arranging, selling records and so on. And it all started in high school as part of a music club that was run as one of the co-curricular activities in the school. So there's the learning that takes place in the classroom, but there is also a lot of learning that takes place outside of the classroom within the school system, and sometimes at the community level also.
I got to throw one at you, Mr. Morgan, and I know you and I, we need to get it off. World skills.
Okay. There is something called World Skills International. It's like the Skills Olympics, where persons from all the countries around the world, the major countries like Japan, Germany, and the UK, and so they all field young people in competitions where they compete in skill areas. There is also a World Skills Americas competition. And in 2019, I think it was, Grenada became a member of World Skills Americas. The intention is that eventually we would become a part of World Skills International also. The idea is that we prepare our young people to be able to compete with other young people from other countries in skilled areas in the same way that you compete in athletics and in football and the other things. As a means of getting our young people to see beyond the current horizons that we have in terms of development. You can be a mechanic in Grenada, and you may be the best mechanic in Grenada. But how does that stand up when you compare yourselves with mechanics from Brazil and from Japan and from other places? The world is becoming a smaller and smaller place, and our workforce has to compete not just with ourselves here, but we have to compete with the workforce from other countries like Singapore and Japan and Taiwan and all these other countries. So World Skills gives us an opportunity to have our outputs of our TVET system and of our education system to compete with the output from other systems. And it gives us useful information as to where we are in terms of the development of our TVET system and what are some of the things we might need to be addressing as we go forward so that we can have our young people become more and more competitive in this globalized world. So basically, in 2019, we had our first World Skills Grenada competition, and we had another competition planned for 2020, but COVID-19 has made it difficult for us to do that. And we didn't have one in 2021 also, but we're hoping that in 2022, later on in this year, that we can stage another World Skills competition. And then we start focusing on preparing young people to be able to compete in the World Skills Americas competition. So that's our target for the short term, to implement additional local World Skills competitions with a view to looking at being able to send one or more persons out in the shortest possible time to compete in the World Skills Americas. Just to say that there are other Caribbean countries who are involved in World Skills. Barbados is very actively involved. Jamaica is very actively involved. Trinidad used to be involved. Grenada is trying to get ourselves ready so that we can also participate in both these competitions.
Gentlemen, we're almost out of time. If not, literally, we're out of time. But I want to indulge that caller that's been waiting. Good morning, caller. You are live. We're out of time, but I want to. Good morning, caller. That's been waiting. Good morning, caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, sir.
It always hurt me to hear people talking about skill and education and this and that. Whatever you learn, whether in school, different types of school, at infancy and this and that, you should be able to transfer it to whatever you're doing. Whether you learn mechanic, you should be transfer it. Whether in theory, you should take it from the theory and bring it to the practical. Whether you learn medical related things, you must take it for what you learn in the classroom to reality. And this is the problem I have with us. Every one of us saying, I don't know if Joe does say that, I hardly believe Joe would say that, that the man has 60 subjects, 60 CXC, but yet he or she cannot transfer what he has, the 60 subject into reality.
Okay.
This is what education is. You should be able to, a man says he's a mathematician, but he cannot transfer it.
Is really critical because
in different things, as for example, to cut a roof.
Okay,
but yet probably talk about triangle and obtuse and acute and all them kind of thing. But put him to cut a roof, he can't transfer it to reality, and he said he's a builder. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller.
To demonstrate the competencies that are required within the workforce. So the emphasis really here is on transfer of learning, because if the learning is transferred, then you don't benefit, and others don't benefit from it. And so the competency-based approach we use for that very reason.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're literally out of time, but Mr. Morgan, I'm going to give. You just was that your final, your final 2 pence, or I'm going to give you an additional 30 just to encapsulate.
Just to say that, Grenada, we're working very hard to create a TBET system that is fit for purpose. And we're hoping that as many people as possible can take advantage of the services that are provided. There are things like institution-based training, enterprise-based training, assessment of prior learning, where persons who have built skills over the years but are not certified can get certified without having to go sit in a classroom for 6 months. We're hoping that as many Grenadians as possible can take advantage of those opportunities that are being made available to them, so that they can advance themselves and create better lives for themselves and their families.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gilbert?
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. I just want to say the ministry is committed to ensuring that we support a well-rounded education system. TBET is a critical pillar of that education system that we seek to endeavor to achieve. And we are thankful for the support of our partners, the National Training Agency as a key partner in terms of the development, the certification, quality assurance system. And we are there to provide as much opportunity as possible for our nation's people, irrespective of age. And so we are promoting lifelong learning, and TBET is a key pillar as part of our lifelong learning program that we hope will be able to transform our economies. So it's good to be on air, and we would meet again to share more at some other point in time, Cadore, because I'm sure there's a lot more we can still discuss
indeed,
when it comes to TBET and education.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Lincoln Morgan from the NTA, and CEO of the NTA, that is, and Mr. Norman Gilbert for PS within the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Development, that is specifically. To all those of you who followed the program, were part of the program, and those of you that called, you listened via Classic 105, via the Classic platform or television, we say thanks for being part of the program, and as I encourage you every day to live life and love life, treating each day as though it's your last day on planet Earth. And at the end of the day, you have an absolute right to try to find the best version of yourself and see how best you can position yourself into being productive citizens as we fulfill our roles and demands in this working environment. Until then, so long everybody. JC loves you. Have a great day.